Hello, dear friends. And this article was inspired by the great alchemist, popularizer, and writer Luis Silva Mascuñana, although my teacher is Sigmund Bathory. My mother always told me that I was a priest because I talked about spiritual matters, but I see myself more as an hermit mystic, independent and heterodox. Opinion piece. Riders of Sophia. It's the feminine side of the Creator, recovering the sacred feminine, hidden meaning of the goddess Sophia. Sophia is the Greek goddess of wisdom. She is the archetype of feminine wisdom. Robert Graves talked about the white goddess. Erich Neumann talked about the Great Mother. Sophia is depicted on the door of Notre-Dame. She symbolizes divine wisdom in the Christian tradition. She is called the Maiden of Light, Mother of Life, and Soul of the World. The Cloud of Unknowing is an anonymous spiritual guide from the 14th century. St. Paul pitted worldly wisdom against divine wisdom. The illuminative path consists in the elevation of the understanding towards the Creator. The mystic becomes a beggar of divine clemency when he begs for grace. The soul comes from its heavenly home to seek a pearl guarded by the serpent. The alchemist creates a force field to access realities hidden by time and space. Let's start. All my life I have searched and longed for a divine wisdom, which is not taught in universities, because it would free the human being from his delusion. It's the wisdom attained by the wise initiates of antiquity and the mystics of all the spiritual traditions of humankind, of which only a few pearls have come down to us because they couldn't transmit all the ineffable knowledge that is beyond human language. Not even all the treasures of the world can pay the value of this knowledge. It doesn't come when one wants it, but when you are granted grace from above on the basis of the merits and virtues that one has cultivated here below. Because help is always a two-way street. That is, they help you when you work, because it's not free. That is why the mystic becomes a beggar of divine clemency when he begs for grace. The masculine and the feminine are always combined in life, just as in musical compositions, which are always a harmonious combination of masculine and feminine notes. Nothing would work in the world without a harmonious combination of the two poles of energy. But in all mythologies, it is always the man who humbly seeks the divine perfection of the woman, who submits him to hard tests to be worthy of her race. Mother Goddess. A Mother Goddess is a goddess who serves as a representation of feminine energy and fertility. In some cultures, she is always represented as Mother Earth, being the generous personification of the earth and life in general. As such, not all goddesses can be considered manifestations of the Mother Goddess. In Western traditions, this goddess was represented in many ways. So, the stone-carved images of the goddess Cybele to the Dion, or goddess who was invoked together with the god Zeus in the Oracle of Dodoma, Greece, until the end of the classical era. Among the Homeric hymns, There is one dedicated to the mother goddess called Haim to Gaia, mother of all. On the other hand, the Sumerians wrote many erotic poems about their mother goddess Ninhursag. Mother Earth and her equivalence as mother goddess is a theme that appears in many mythologies. Mother Earth is the personification of the earth, generally further described in various cultures as a fertile goddess, representing the fertile earth, being also described in some cultures as the mother of other deities, in which they are seen as patronesses of motherhood. This was generally believed because the earth was seen as the mother of all life that grew on it. Some authors argue that the cult of the mother goddess was the origin of the cult that Catholics and other denominations of Christianity give to the Virgin Mary, such as the invocations of the Black Virgins. The White Goddess. The great British writer and scholar Robert Graves, author of I, Claudius, investigated the figure of the White Goddess in one of his most famous books. Graves reconstructs what he considers the magical language of ancient Mediterranean and Northern Europe, linked to the popular religious ceremonies in honor of the goddess Moon. Throughout the book, he relates how in Europe and the Near East there were matriarchal cultures that worshipped a supreme goddess and recognized male gods only as her sons, consorts, or sacrificial victims. These cultures, according to Graves, were eliminated by the eruption of patriarchy that took away women's authority, elevated the consorts of the goddess to a position of divine supremacy, and reconstructed myths and rituals to hide the past. According to the author, the patriarchal conquest reached Western Europe around 400 before Christ. In the White Goddess, Graves studies several mythological traditions in search of the historical and mystical antecedents of poetry. Thus, he begins with Greek mythology, continues throughout the survivals of the Celtic bards, and ends with satirical references to the author's contemporary society. This essay has been considered a turning point in his poetic and novelistic work. The Great Mother. The Great Mother, a phenomenology of female creations of the unconscious. It is a 1956 work by Israeli psychologist Erich Neumann. It has been described as monumental in its breadth by Robert Hopke, who regards it as Neumann's most enduring contribution to Jungian thought, text to the origins and history of consciousness. The Great Mother includes an investigation of the female psyche animated by the project of a deep-depth psychology of the feminine, but in addition to being important for analytical psychology, this documented essay on the archetype of the great feminine contributes to a therapy of culture that makes possible the integration between the patriarchal world of consciousness and the matriarchal world of the psyche. Neumann comprehensively studies the archetype of the matriarchal goddess and the symbolic structures of the feminine image as they appear as projected by the human psyche in the mythology, ritual, art and creation, and in fantasies and dreams that persist from prehistoric humanity to the present day. To this end, he analyzes extensive image material from several cultures, delineating the central characteristics of matriarchal feminine figures and their initiatory and religious as well as civilizational symbolism. It's something ineffable. Those who have reached the supreme knowledge that transcends human science find something of such awesome grandeur and beauty that they cannot convey it in words, and if they could, no one would understand it and would think they were crazy. Divine greatness leaves you so impressed that you are struck dumb with surprise. At first, you don't think you deserve so much grace, but then you are filled with gratitude and praise to the Creator of the universe. Some mystics call it the cloud of not knowing, because you remain babbling, knowing nothing, but you understand great things and transcend all human sciences. The Cloud of Unknowing is a spiritual guide written in the second half of the 14th century, shortly after 1390, by an unknown monk, probably Carthusian, who would have lived in England. In its 75 chapters, a Carthusian monk teaches a young man, about 24 years old, about the contemplative life in which the soul is united with God. The higher you go, the less you understand, but it seems to you very low what you knew first. To stammer is to talk or read with difficult, slow and hesitant pronunciation, sometimes transposing the letters or syllables as something happens to me. There is no human faculty or science that can understand or explain it, because it is too subtle, as St. John of the Cross said, San Juan de la Cruz. In a Nag Hammadi papyrus entitled The Origin of the World, Sophia is represented as the ultimate destroyer of this material universe, Yaldabaoth, and all his heavens, which interpreted in modern language means destroyer of the matrix. Here is a paragraph. Sophia will throw into the abyss the rulers who will be destroyed because of their weakness, for they will become like volcanoes and will consume one another until they perish at the hands of the chief father. When he was destroyed them, he will turn against himself and destroy himself until he ceases to exist, and his heavens shall fall one upon another, and his forces shall be consumed by fire. His eternal kingdoms shall also be overthrown, and its heavens will fall and split in two. They shall fall into the abyss, and the abyss shall be brought down. The light will extinguish the darkness and blot it out. It will be like something that never was. Definition. Sophia means in Greek wisdom, and is the Greek goddess of wisdom, and likewise is a fundamental term within Hellenistic philosophy and its religion, as well as in Platonism, Gnosticism, Orthodox Christianity, esoteric Christianity, and mystical Christianity. Sophiology is a philosophical concept related to wisdom, as well as theological concept related to divine wisdom. In Gnosticism, Sophia is a female figure analogous to the human soul, but also simultaneously one of the feminine aspects of God. The Gnostics held that she was the twin soul of Jesus, it is to say, the bride of Christ, and the Holy Spirit of the Trinity. In the Nag Hammadi texts, Sophia is the lowest theon or expression of the emanation of divine light. She is considered to have fallen from grace in some way, creating or helping to create the material world. The Sophia of Jesus Christ is the fourth treatise of Nag Hammadi Codex III. In this treatise, a divinized Jesus Christ is presented without the need for human form. In Judaism, Chokmah appears alongside the Shekinah, the glory of God, a figure that plays a pivotal role in the cosmology of the Kabbalists as an expression of the feminine aspect of God. It is a central theme in the wisdom books, in the Book of Wisdom as well as in Ecclesiastes and the Book of Proverbs. A central passage that personifies wisdom or Sophia in the Hebrew Bible is Proverbs 8:22-31. The Hellenistic scholar Philo of Alexandria attempted to harmonize Platonic philosophy with the Jewish scriptures. He used the word logos for the role and function of wisdom, a concept adopted by John and applied to Jesus. Mites. Mother Sophia has received many names throughout human history: the Maiden of Light, the Mother of Life, the Soul of the World, and the constellation Virgo. Carl Gustav Jung linked the figure of Sophia with the highest archetype of the anima in depth psychology. Sophia's archetypal fall and recovery is linked to many different myths and stories as a damsel in distress rescued by a heroic knight. Among these myths are, first, Isis, who is still in the cosmic womb, gave birth to Horus without a consort. Second, the kidnapping and rescue of Helen of Troy. Third, Persephone and her descent into Hades, from where she returns to life but is obliged to return to Hades for 6 months of the year. Fourth, the fall of Eve and the birth of Christ throughout the Virgin Mary. Fifth, the descent of Orpheus to the underworld to rescue his wife Eurydice. Sixth, Odysseus returned to his kingdom Ithaca to reclaim his wife Penelope. Seventh, the rescue of Andromeda by Perseus. Eighth, the descent of Ishtar to the underworld in the Epic of Gilgamesh. 9. Pandora. 10. Cinderella and the Sleeping Beauty. 11th, the slaying of the dragon by St. George to rescue the princess. 12. The rescue of the kidnapped Sita by her husband, the god king Rama, with the help of Hanuman in the Ramayana. Christian symbol. This wisdom is symbolized in Sophia, the Greek goddess of wisdom, who in Christian theology describes a divine aspect of the theological concept, referring to the wisdom of God. Wisdom is always of feminine energy because it requires patience, work, and humility, which are feminine virtues, but the heroic act of seeking it is of masculine energy, as manifested in the heroes of antiquity, such as the labors of Hercules. She has been venerated as the wise wife of Solomon by the Jews, as the queen of wisdom and war Athena by the Greeks, and the Holy Spirit of wisdom by the Christians. Sophia is found in all the wisdom books of the Bible. There are many references to her in the book of Proverbs and in the apocryphal books of Sirach and the wisdom of Solomon. She is wisdom incarnate, the goddess of all wise men. Wisdom is called in Hebrew chokma, in Greek Sophia, and in Latin sapientia. In Christian theology, it describes an aspect of God or the theological concept concerning to the wisdom of God. The Apostle Paul refers to the concept especially in 1 Corinthians, but in a somewhat obscure way, disarming earthly or worldly wisdom. In quotes, "Where is the wise man? Where is the learned man? Where is the subtle reasoner of this world? Has not God shown that the wisdom of this world is foolishness?" Paul pitted worldly wisdom against the lofty wisdom of God. In quotes, "What we proclaim is a wisdom of God, mysterious and secret, which he prepared for our glory before the world existed." The three ways. Christian mystical theology is one of the branches of Christian theology characterized by the search for a personal, unitive, and loving experience with God. It also includes the set of ascetic and meditative disciplines aimed at this end. It is also known as negative theology. In the explanation of the mystical way, there are differences among the different authors that can be attributed to the geographical and temporal dispersion of the mystics, the personal variety of mystical experience, and the degree of theological formation on the same ones. For this part, we follow Saint John of the Cross, San Juan de la Cruz, as he offers one of the most complete and clear expositions. Traditionally, mysticism is a path of three ways or stages: the purgative way, the illuminative way, and the unitive way. First, the purgative way consists in the purgation of the memory, understood as the power of the soul, in order to cleanse it of the sensitive attachments that come from the body. In the words of St. John of the Cross, one must lose the taste for the appetite for things. The appetite as such is not necessarily bad, but the attachment or taste it provokes in the memory is, because it prevents it from orienting itself fully towards God. Corporal deprivation and prayer are the principal purgative means. The state in which the memory is submerged is called hope. Second one, the illuminative way consists in the elevation of the understanding towards the Creator, understood as the power of the soul. Once the understanding is cleansed of all relationship with creatures, it remains empty to surrender to the dark wisdom or secret wisdom that is known without the need to understand, and an experience that in mysticism is called faith. Third one, the unitive way consists in the purification of the will, understood as the power of the soul. In it, the soul reaches the most perfect degree of union with God, since it has emptied its own will, the most of itself, in order to give it to God. It's the most perfect degree of charity. Hymn of the Pearl. In the Syriac text of the Acts, we find the hymn of the Pearl, where the soul who has been sent from her heavenly home to seek the pearl guarded by the serpent, but has forgotten here below her heavenly mission until she is reminded by a letter from father, mother, and brother, performs her task, receives again her glorious garment, and returns to her former home. Ode to Sophia. Of the other hymns which are preserved in the Greek version with greater fidelity than in the Syriac text, which has been the subject of revision, the first which deserves attention is the Ode to Sophia, which describes the marriage of the maiden to her heavenly bridegroom and her introduction to the higher kingdom of light. This maiden, called Daughter of Light, is Sophia, on whose head the king, it is to say the father of the living, sits on the throne. Her husband is, according to the most probable interpretation, the son of the living, it is to say Christ. With her, the living, it is to say the pneumatic souls, enter the pleroma and receive the glorious light of the living Father and praise together with the living Spirit, the Father of truth and the Mother of wisdom. First prayer of consecration. Sophia is also invoked in the first prayer of consecration. There she is called Merciful Mother, Consort of the Masculine, Revealer of the perfect mysteries, Mother of the seven houses, who finds rest in the eighth house. In the second prayer of consecration, she is also designated Perfect Mercy and Consort of the Masculine, but she is also called Holy Spirit, Revealer of mysteries of every magnitude, hidden matter, she who knows the mysteries of the elect, and she who participates in the conflict of noble antagonists. Luis Silva. The goddess Sophia is represented as at the main entrance to the Cathedral of Notre-Dame, as I have been taught by Luis Silva, the best popular essay of alchemy in Spain, well known and awaited for his books, to whom I send my respects and my recognition. Silva works with the alchemy of the dew, collected with canvases during the spring nights, but there are many ways to reach the same result, which is none other than the spiritual transformation of the human being. Luis Silva Mascuñana, born in Mataró, Barcelona in 1962, is a writer, researcher and scholar of classical texts of alchemy. He is a recognized expert in the study and practice of historical alchemical texts. In addition to translator and writer of recognized works within the historical field related to the subject, he is an academic and has a degree in law. At present, he carries out field work in his own alchemical laboratory, in which he puts into practice the knowledge acquired from the texts written by Fulcanelli, Isaac Newton, Ramon Llull or Raimundo Lulio, and a long list of other authors. As a scholar of alchemical texts, he is the author of a translation of Theories and Symbols of the Alchemists, the great work, original by Albert Poisson, published in 1891. He is also the author of the Treatise of Philosoteria, Real Alchemy Unveiled, and of his most recognized work, Alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone, winner of the second edition of the Juan Antonio Cebrián Prize for Research and Historical Dissemination, awarded by a jury of experts and the radio station Onda Cero in 2012. Notre-Dame. Sophia, the goddess of wisdom at the entrance of the Cathedral of Notre-Dame, is seated dignifiedly on a cathedra and holds two books in her right hand, one open and one closed. The open book signifies the exoteric knowledge with X of the human sciences, which is available to the general public, while the closed book represents the esoteric divine knowledge with S, which is only available to the initiates who deserve it, because they have worked themselves, because everything demands work. In his left hand he holds an scepter, which is a symbol of power, because knowledge is power, and the maximum knowledge is the maximum power. But I talked not of political or economic power, but of the ultimate power, which consists in the great spiritual liberation of the matrix. All other powers are trinkets compared to the ultimate freedom called enlightenment, nirvana, satori, moksha, etc., according each tradition. Sophia's eyes are closed because she doesn't look outward but inward as in meditation, and her mouth is also closed and tight because she cannot talk even if she wanted to. She cannot explain it in words, and if she could, no one would understand her. In the center of the image is a vertical staircase representing the ascent and descent, no staircase, a ladder, representing the ascent and descent of frequency, because Sophia is connecting the higher planes with the lower. The Cathedral of Our Lady of Paris is one of the oldest and most important buildings of all those built in the Gothic style. The innovative use of the ribbed vault and flying butters, the numerous and colorful rose windows, and the naturalism and abundance of sculptural decoration set it apart from Romanesque architecture. The great writer Victor Hugo dedicated this beautiful paragraph to it, in quotes, and the cathedral was not only his mother's companion, it was the universe. Rather, it was nature itself. He never dreamed that there were other edges than the stained glass windows in continual bloom, another shadow that of the ever-looming stone foliage, full of birds in the thickets of the Saxon capitals, other mountains than the colossal towers of the church, or other oceans that perish roaring beneath his feet. The great alchemist Fulcanelli deciphered many alchemical symbols of this cathedral in his famous work, The Mystery of the Cathedrals, dedicated to the esoteric interpretation of hermetic symbols. This is the secret of alchemy according to Fulcanelli. There is a way to manipulate matter and energy to produce what modern scientists call a force field. The field acts on the observer and places him in a privileged position vis-a-vis the universe. From this position, he has access to realities normally hidden from us by time and space, matter and energy. This is what we call the great work. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.